What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and learn about driving in Britain compared to driving in America. When people think about this, usually the first thing that comes to our mind is always that everyone's driving on the wrong side of the road. Americans, when they think about Britain, people are driving on the left side. I'm sure people in Britain, when they think about America or travel to America, think about how we drive on the right side. And I'm genuinely convinced that if I went to Britain and had to drive, I would be scared. Like, trying to get used to driving on the left side of the road, I can get that through my head, but also like making turns and then like getting it through my mind that when I turn left, I have to then turn onto the left side of the road. It's so against every instinct that you build up driving throughout your life. And Americans, like every American owns a car. We drive everywhere. No one uses public transportation, so driving is like second nature to us. So that difference alone kind of blows our mind. But I'm very, very excited for this video because it's going to talk about all the other ways, maybe the less known, the less obvious differences between American and British driving, how they're different. That sounds pretty fascinating to me because I don't really know what the differences are besides the what side of the road, the famous one. So I'm excited for this. Let's take a look.
From the driving test right through to the cars themselves and, the side of the road that we drive on, as well as the words that we use to describe car things. It just goes to show that Britain and America are two nations divided by a common median/central reserve. Now, before we get underway, you may be thinking, why should I take any information on this matter from somebody who doesn't drive? Well, the truth of the matter is, I did try to learn to drive, actually, here in the United States, so I have experience of that. I have no experience back in England, but I've seen cars. Nearly got killed by one once. I was on my bike. You didn't need to know that.
That's another thing I've heard about. Good tip for Americans in Britain is when you're crossing the road, we're so used to looking a certain direction, like when you're crossing the road from a certain side, like Americans want to look left to check to see if traffic is coming. But in Britain, since everyone's on the left side of the road going forward, you want to look right. And like even little things like that can throw you off and actually be dangerous, honestly.
And so, without further ado, let's take a look at 6 ways that Britain and America's car culture is very, very different.
Okay. License.
Okay, so before we get into the good stuff, a little bit about how people acquire their licenses in both countries. In the United Kingdom, where I'm from, you can get a full license at the age of 17, but until then, as soon as you apply for one, you have to have a provisional license until you pass your driving test. These provisional licenses...
That's interesting, because in America, you can... you can try to get a provisional license if you're 15. Thinking about that now, that is really young. I'm kind of surprised we allow that. You gotta be 18 to vote, 21 to drink alcohol, but you can be 15 to operate a car legal. That's kind of funny. It's like easier to get a license in America to drive a car, which is a dangerous, you have to have responsibility. It's easier to get that license than to get a gun or something. It's kind of weird when you think about it, but I didn't know how it worked in Britain. You can get a provisional license. He didn't say exactly when, maybe 15 or 16, and then you get a full license when you're 17. And in America, you can get a full driver's license when you're 16. 16, wow.
Licenses can be acquired from the age of 15 years and 9 months, very specific. Whereas in the United States, this actually varies from state to state. And they don't really call that pre-license a provisional license, but a restricted driver's license. And notice, of course, the difference between driving license and driver's license.
Oh my gosh, this is where the technicalities kill you, huh? Well, where I'm from, I've actually heard driving permit for when... before you have a full driver's license, you get a driving permit. Something I've heard that term. Driving license. Driver's license. Huh.
And the spelling of license. Now, like I said...
Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait.
license and drive.
License. Oh my gosh, I've never noticed that. I'm sure I've spelled this wrong. I didn't even know which one was the American spelling. Okay.
Driver's license and the spelling of license. Now, like I said, it does differ from state to state. In South Dakota, for example, you can acquire one of these restricted licenses from the age of 14 years and 3 months. And that
Wow. Man, he's talking about the American stuff right now. I actually didn't know that there was a state that went all the way down to 14. Wait a minute. 14. That's actually a little scary. Like, you're 14? I didn't know that. I actually thought this was pretty standardized, like maybe on a federal level. Although all the United States, there's so many states, like, you never quite know what the local laws are gonna be, so I'm not shocked by this. I'm just shocked by how low the age can be to drive a car.
That's issued by a department called the South Dakota Department of Public Safety. But, you know, to be fair, South Dakota is one of the 5 least densely populated states in the nation. So it's the cows that I worry for. Now, that's kind of an extreme example. And in any case, when we're talking about passing your driver's test and getting your full unrestricted license, that will happen anywhere from the age of 16 to 18, depending on the state. Now,
Yeah. Like, the commonly known age to get your driver's license in America is 16. That's like the default. I'm sure some states are a little different, but you get your permit when you're 15, you get your license when you're 16. That's pretty normal.
Now, in Britain, a driving test consists of 3 sections. You've got your theory exam, your hazard perception exam, and then your supervised driving exam. Now,
Wait, what?
theory exam.
Wait, what? This is advanced. This makes this seem so much more intricate and like comprehensive than the tests we do in America. I just sat at this dinky little computer terminal in the Department of Motor Vehicles for half an hour, took a test. You hop in the car, someone with a clipboard checks you off. Okay, you can drive. Good job. And it's not too bad. But the British driving exam has 3 parts, and maybe it's their names that are scaring me.
The state. Now, in Britain, a driving test consists of 3 sections. You've got your theory exam, your hazard perception exam.
Hazard perception exam. I think I understand theory test. That's like the test we would have in America. You just a test on the laws of the road. You do it on a computer. But this hazard perception test, I don't believe we have that. Not since I got my license. That's for sure. Because there's a practical exam where you're driving with someone in the car with you, trying to prove to them that you're competent, but there's no hazard perception. Is that like on a computer or real life, where you're trying to show that you can what? Like pick out when a car is barreling towards you and that you have the reflexes to like identify it as a, a threat or a hazard, like identifying that there's a cone or that the bridge is too low, or that's it. This is a bit more involved.
Exam, and then your supervised driving exam. Now, in the United States, or at least Indiana, where I took lessons, I was taught by a combination of my wife and my grandfather-in-law, who to this very day remain among the bravest people I've ever known. But to even get to the point of taking those driving lessons, I had to take a written test, which was easy. I didn't even revise for it. It was mostly common sense stuff. And
Exactly. That's what most people say is like the test. I mean, you can study for the written test, or it's done on a computer now. You can study for that like the night before and probably pass it, from what I remember.
And I had to have an eye test as well, just to make sure that I could see things. And once I passed the written test and the eye test with flying colours, Hazel mainly, I was then given a learner's permit, or was it a restricted license? I'm confused about that. But something was given to me. And
Learner's permit. Yeah, I've heard. I mean, I don't hear anybody ever saying restricted license, ever. It's a learner's permit. The thing you get when you're like 15, you pass a couple tests. You don't even have to, apparently to get your learner's permits, you don't even have to drive around with an examiner. You just get the permit, and you have to drive around with your parents or some guardian. Kind of scary. I actually forgot to get the learner's permit. You don't even have to get examined by a human being in a car.
And I was able to drive around parking lots for a bit. Never passed the test, and now that I live in Chicago, don't really need to. But I've been in the passenger seat on many an occasion, including one where we crashed. Probably didn't help that I never took driving lessons in the UK. But even if I had, I might have been even more confused, particularly because of the next difference.
Right and left. Okay, I gotta say, this is the part that genuinely would frighten me. Like in the real world, going to Britain, driving a car, like it seems so straightforward. Oh, get it through your head. You drive on the left side of the road. But in practice, your body, I feel like my brain and body wouldn't accept it. Or randomly in the middle of driving, you'd have like some kind of crisis where your brain is like, wait a sec, you've been driving on the left side of the road this whole time, and you're about to crash, even though you're doing it correctly. You know, does that make sense? Like, I'm afraid that would happen.
I think it goes without saying, mostly because most people are aware of this, that Britain and America definitely drive on different sides of the road. Indeed, you know, I've heard British people say, why do Americans drive on the wrong side of the road? But
That's exactly what Americans say. Yeah, that is the exact same joke Americans do, where we're like, in Britain, got to drive on the wrong side of the road.
I don't think the burden of accountability lies with Americans. Indeed, like the United States, the majority of the planets, not including oceans, drive on the right.
Oh, I was wondering about that. I'm actually glad that he mentioned this. I was wondering, are we the weird ones? Like, America's weird for using the imperial system of measurement and Fahrenheit and inches and feet and yards. I know we're weird for that. We're the minority. But for driving on the right side of the road, I think we're the majority. We're not the weird ones all the time.
Because of this, of course, America has the steering wheel on the left, Britain has kept theirs on the right. But this was not always the case, at least in terms of American cars and American roads. Before the 1908 launch of the Ford Motor Company's Model T, virtually every car in America placed the steering wheel on the right. In fact, Ford only made that change to make it easier for people entering on the passenger side to avoid oncoming traffic. Until this, though, long after a law was passed in 1792 mandating that vehicles, horse buggies and the like, must travel along the right side of the road, it was widely accepted that steering should take place on the right.
That's another thing. Whenever I see a car in movies or TV that has a steering wheel on the right side, it just flips my brain upside down. If I had to drive a car with the steering wheel on the right side of the car and drive on the left side of the road, I just feel like my brain would be so flipped upside down from years and years of driving the exact opposite way. I feel like it'd be difficult to adjust.
Evidence of this can still be found today, in fact, in Amish communities where horse buggies are sometimes steered in this manner. When mass production of American cars began in the late 19th century, it was widely viewed that right-hand steering was the preferred method, since, it had evidently worked out just fine for the journeymen of yesteryear. However, by the turn of the century, motor companies began looking for innovative new ways to sell their latest product. Cadillac introduced the first lever-operated headlights, while the Marmon Motor Company is believed to have pioneered the use of a rear-view mirror in 1911, and so it was that Ford introduced left-hand steering in 1908.
Wait, you're telling me that steering wheels on the left-hand side of the car was just some marketing gimmick to sell cars or something? Somehow that doesn't surprise me, in a way.
Because it was later seen that left-hand steering was conducive to safer driving, since it was easier for the driver to judge his or her proximity to oncoming traffic, this new way of steering became virtually standardized by the mid-1910s.
I was just thinking, maybe there is a benefit, like, there must be some kind of benefit to the way we do this, because, like, in Britain, it's been decided the steering wheel will be on the right, and in America it's going to be on the left. And I was like, why is that? It is for being able to better, like, have a better awareness of how close traffic is to your car physically. or at least traffic coming the other direction. I guess that's a good enough reason. I mean, that makes sense enough.
Traffic, this new way of steering became virtually standardized by the mid-1910s and has remained thus to this very day. But there is one United States territory that has bucked the trend, and that's the United States Virgin Islands. There, they drive on the left despite the fact that the steering wheels are also on the left. It must be chaos.
That is funny. I wonder why that is, but I feel like if I was going to drive on the left-hand side of the road, I'd like to keep my left side steering wheel, at least at first, and that would like better acclimate me. I don't know. Maybe that's where I need to live.
Who knows? I've not tried it, but maybe one day. Those are also on the left, Virgin Islands.
The U.S. Virgin Islands. That's where you go to train. That's where you get your training in as an American. You train there, and then you can graduate to driving in Britain, and the steering wheel can go to the right. That's definitely how it should work.
Who knows? I've not tried it, but maybe one day. Now, whether you drive on the right or the left, there's no disputing which country has the most cars.
Numbers. Oh, I already know what this is going to be. I already know, because I've watched videos about Britain that talk about public transportation in Britain. It's good, it's popular, it actually works, and is widespread. In America, the public transportation is terrible, and everyone has a car. We never walk anywhere. Even if the store is less than half a mile down the street, I will drive. And darn it, that's what I'm going to do. It's how I was raised. That's the one Americanism you're not going to take from me, and our giant portion sizes. So I know with numbers, America has way more cars. I wonder how much more. I mean, our population is also a lot bigger. But besides that, even if that weren't the case, we'd have more cars.
When it comes to car ownership, Britain cannot hold a candle to the United States. And that probably makes sense for reasons that I've outlined before. We have a fairly well-connected rail system across the entire country. That's something that the United States does not really boast. And in Britain, most towns and cities do have a fairly comprehensive bus system. So you don't always have to drive to work, for example, or to your kids.
Man, why don't we have an interconnected rail system across the country? That makes sense. Why don't we have that? I swear, it's like these little things we've just given up on that would make life easier for a lot more people. Or at least we could have better bus systems or something. I mean, come on.
Sports day. If you take the bus, you've got an excuse if you're late. America is a wide open country. Not everywhere has great public transportation. And add to that, the popularity around cars is just a big part of American culture. Certainly has been since the 20th century. And so these reasons perhaps account for why there are only 471 cars in Britain for every 1,000 people.
All right, so basically half of the population has a car.
I say only, that probably sounds like a lot, but that number includes children in the population. So if you just eradicate children, not literally, just in this scenario, then, that number is going to be quite a lot higher, but it probably still wouldn't reach America's number of cars per person, even if you include American children in this, some of whom, of course, South Dakota knows all about that. Because in the United States, there are 838 cars for every 1,000 people. Now,
I'm not surprised at all. At all. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been higher. Because if you are a family in America, you have a car. You have a car. It doesn't matter if the car works, doesn't matter what kind of car it is. You need a car to get places. I mean, it is so normalized. And the infrastructure in America is just built for cars. At this point, it's kind of unfortunate for the select few people who can't afford cars. It's really terrible, honestly. I don't know why we don't make that a bit better.
Now, certain states in America do have a disproportionate stranglehold on this very stat. Take, for example, the state of Wyoming. There are more cars per capita in that state than any other state in the nation. There are, in fact, 1,100 cars for every 1,000 people.
More cars than there are people. We got people out here with more than one car. Actually, for families. Now, this is per person, not per family. Yeah, more than one car per person. In Wyoming, he said? while in Wyoming, it's like there's nothing. It's just empty space. You literally need a car to get around.
It is one of 7 states in the Union where cars outnumber people. And then there's car production as well. The United States is the second highest producer of automobiles in the entire world behind China, and it's certainly way ahead of Britain. And so much for the number of cars. What about the amount of miles we're actually driving? Well, the United States absolutely kicks Britain's arse.
As soon as he said this, the amount of driving miles in the United States, like, oh man, I want to hear this one. It must be absurd.
On that one, a 2010 study found that British people on average drive about 6,500 miles a year, which if you do the mathematics on that, that's about 18 miles a day, that sounds like a lot to me.
Right.
But that's nothing compared to the United States, because Americans on average are doing twice that amount each year. The average American drives about 13,000 miles a year, which is about 36 miles a day.
36 miles a day, average American. I mean, I'm sure some people are doing much more and some people much less, but because of the car ownership culture in America, I think Americans are all willing to, it's part of our culture to take a job that's kind of far away from home sometimes, like 30 minutes, an hour from home, and just commute in the morning and commute back home. So you're driving your car 30, 40, 50 miles a day just going to work. And that's normal because everyone has a car. I think it's stuff like that. Like, I can easily see how the average man, 36 miles a day, was it?
Each year. The average American drives about 13,000 miles a year, which is about 36 miles a day. That sounds like hell. And I know that it is because I used to drive from Anderson to Indianapolis and back. You're talking there about 40 miles. So that was about 80 miles a day I used to do. That was routine. I knew a lot of people that were doing that. And that
Exactly. It's just routine. Like, these long car commutes just become normal.
That's not the only commute route, of course, of that size in the United States. And yet again, these numbers could be swayed by certain states out west. Take, for example, Wyoming again. 21,821 miles per capita per year driven by the folks of Wyoming. It is number 1 in the nation yet again. And that's about 60 miles a day.
60 a day. Wow. I didn't know about all this stuff about Wyoming. I've never lived there. But I think it's pretty wide open. And you got to travel to get to anything important for a lot of people there. Wow, still, averaging 60 miles of driving a day. Oh, that could make you insane.
So, I mean, this is the state of Wyoming where there are only 2 escalators in the entire state. They're used to doing things the hard way.
Okay, I'm very much enjoying this, but this video does go on for quite a bit. Like, we're only just about halfway done. So I think I'm going to stop it right here and come back and finish this in part 2 of the ways British and American driving are different. I'm going to be excited for that. That's probably going to come out after this video, part 2 of this. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in part 2 or more videos, like this, me reacting to British culture and British stuff I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.